Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining our spring general election GOTV live stream. Today, we're going to do a community power coalition live stream in partnership with one of our partners in Stevens Point, Cap Services. So, if you haven't already, please go ahead and like and share this post on this live stream and go ahead and make sure that your friends and family are watching. We're going to share some really great information about the election and talk about what's been happening since our last election and how you can plug into this one on Tuesday. So please go ahead and share. We'll give folks a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll go ahead with introductions. Okay, so now that folks have had a minute to share and like and get settled in, we're gonna go ahead and get started. First, I want to say I'm Monka. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I work at Freedom Inc. here in Madison, Wisconsin. And today I'm joined by Pong. Pong, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Pong Vang. I am the Assistant Director of Multicultural Engagement here at CAP Services. We are located in Stevens Point, Wisconsin.
Awesome. So thank you for being here, Pong. Pong is a part of our Community Power Coalition. We're a group of Black and Southeast Asian organizations who believe in our liberation, who do direct services work and grassroots organizing work. And we want to make sure that our people are represented when it comes to elections in Wisconsin. So we do education and turnout and culturally specific work to make sure that our folks are not left behind and forgotten about when it comes to civic participation. So today, um, I just want to remind folks as well, if you need captions, you can go ahead and turn that on your screen. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what's been happening since the last election. And Pong, you can hop in. I'm just going to cover a
Mhm.
few key points, but you can hop in if you want to about what you're seeing in Stevens Point. But all across our country, a lot has been going on since the previous election in November. Um, in November, Trump actually won the election, and the Trump administration has wasted no time showing us who he cares about and who he doesn't care about, right? So for our communities, Black and Southeast Asian folks, Trump does not care about us. Um, in fact, he wants us to be oppressed and he wants us to fail. We see those in the ways that he has carried out all of the threats that he's made against our communities since his last presidency and before this past election. Within days of him becoming president, he already has put out over 200 executive orders that are targeting our communities and really letting us know where he sees us fitting in this country, right? And what he thinks our rights are in this country, which is very little to none. So, a few examples of him carrying out threats against our communities is that Trump has already shut down the police accountability database. This was one of the only ways that especially Black folks, but anyone who experiences police violence was able to track who is a cop that is harming our communities and able to show like, hey, this person has committed murders, has had bad conduct at other places. Like we don't want them in our police department, right? And we don't want them around our communities. And so Trump has already shut down that database, and that greatly impacts our people. I know that I grew up in a place where I wish that we would have had some protection against the police in our communities. And so this is like a really huge blow to us, especially again, Black folks who are constantly being murdered by the police. The Trump administration has already started seizing passports of people who have an X identifier for gender on their passport, and who people who apply with that as well. So this X identifier is used a lot by our trans siblings and folks um and folks who are non-binary as well and gender non-conforming. And so to have your privacy encroached on and to have your rights taken away by having your passport taken, um, we're heartbroken and we're also angry about that, right? Because already trans people do not have a sense of safety in our communities, and they should not have to they should not have to fear if they're going to be able to move freely across borders, especially not in a time where they're being targeted. And the administration has put a spotlight on trans people, and not in a good way, right? Um, Also happening at the federal level is mass deportations. Our folks are being impacted by this every day, especially here in Wisconsin. Already in Milwaukee, we have a Hmong woman, Ma Yang, who was deported in February, and we're fighting to make sure that Ma can be reunited with her family. Um, but we know that this is wrong. We know that deportations are inhumane, and they negatively impact not just the person experiencing it, but their families as well. Similar to how when Black folks are getting locked up at disproportionate rates, and our families are being destroyed and torn apart, that is the same way that deportation impacts everyone, right? So when we talk about people who came here um, seeking, like, fleeing from their home countries, or their their parents and their parents' came here fleeing from their home countries, mainly because our military was in their countries, trying to destabilize the area, get resources, get oil, things like that. um, when someone is deported, a lot of times they're going back to a place that they've never been to before. They're going to a place that they don't know the culture, that they don't know the language, that they have no money and no resources, and that they're going to get exploited. And so we've done a Know Your Rights live stream recently. So if you're looking for more information about that, you can look at our Facebook page, Freedom Inc.'s Facebook page, to see that live stream. We also have a hotline for Southeast Asian community members. That's a 24/7 emergency assistance hotline by our national partners at CFIN, Southeast Asian Freedom Network. If you are Hmong, Lao, Thai, Vietnamese, or Cambodian, you can call nationwide. Please leave a message in any language and we'll return the calls within 24 hours. All calls are confidential. We're not lawyers, but we'll connect you to lawyers as needed. And then Janae is sharing in the chat Ma Yang's GoFundMe. So if folks can please um, donate to that and share that link. That'd be really great. Like I said, for Black folks, similar to how when we get someone taken from us and sent to prison, it really destroys the family. It puts a financial burden as well as a huge emotional toll on the family as well. So if you can donate to Ma's GoFundMe so that her family can help her at least to get settled in Laos while she's there and while we fight to bring her back home. Hong, did you want to say anything about this, about especially like the deportation piece and Ma Yang being deported in Milwaukee?
Yeah, so since Monka talked a little bit in English, I'm gonna talk a little bit in Hmong, so that maybe um, some of you can also understand in Hmong too. Sorry if we don't have all the language, but nhớ rằng mình sẽ đợi thế trời này bao tụi nó thăm bạn nó lo cho nên gọi là mình chỉ xa cho nên đã cá một trâu cho nên ở trâu xíu thế này đã cá một trâu đỡ tết chờ nữa xử lý ăn luôn the y này tin nó tụi xài má nữa nè nếu nhớ trâu bị mèo quá kỳ nữa chỉ là tí họ muốn xa một trâu tí tết chấm lo tí lỡ xa mù chỉ cho nên nó mù nó cũng nhớ nhua thế giờ nó còn lỡ chỉ bao năng rồi chỉ bao hai cho lù lo rồi có thể nói chỉ nó cũng nhua trâu lỡ hẳn 俾個每都地方啦，一順二至一順二俾啦，你可能個 block 下的，有啲項目就乜能啦，你做 message 啦，mà大家睇到呢，แล้วมั่วจะนั่งป้อลูมองลูบล็อกลูไทยลูยาลาลูเที่ยวลูคัมพูเดียนะยันนี่ฮะมั่วชีหันหูเราแล้วเที่ยวแล้วมั่วเก็บป้าเราเนี่ยกูจะหาไปหลอนะสุดเที่ยวback to you มั้งกัน
Thank you for sharing that, Pong. And so, again, like I was saying, Trump has carried out through on all of his threats against our people. He is not for us. He has never been for us. Any lies that he's been telling about making the economy better, have we seen the price of eggs go down? No. And we will likely not see the price of eggs go down. He is incompetent. He is filling his cabinet with people who are incompetent. They are not going to do any work for the good of our people. Now we have to come together and do work for each other and show up for each other. And one of the ways to do that is to actually take action if you are able to take action in elections, right? Especially our local elections. Right now, as we speak, Elon Musk has already spent over 25 million on our Supreme Court race, Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Conservatives and people who are part of the Trump administration have all eyes on Wisconsin to make sure that Wisconsin models the federal government right now, to make sure that the people who we elect are in alignment with them, are in lockstep with them. And we actually can't let that happen. This is not even about parties. This is about our values. This is about the issues that we care about and making sure that our voices are heard to say, no, I don't want you prioritizing billionaires so that they can have sell their Teslas in Wisconsin, right? I don't want you prioritizing special interests, right? I want you prioritizing my family and my community because we can't pay rent right now. We cannot afford gas right now. We cannot afford childcare, right? And so we need to make sure that our voices are heard and we send a clear message, a loud and clear message to the Trump administration and the rest of the country to say hands off Wisconsin, like we are not going, right? To put that in context, like the highest spend for a Supreme Court race in the past has been about $5 million. So let's let that sink in. Elon Musk has already spent 25 million. So Wisconsin is important. We're important. Oftentimes, like we're able to set the trend for what happens in the other states. So this is an important election. Just because we showed up in November and Trump won doesn't mean that we should stop showing up. We can still influence our state and we can still make sure that our state doesn't fall to the trend of federal politics right now. So, with that being said, we're going to take a look at what we're actually voting for on April 1st. So the election is Tuesday, April 1st. If y'all didn't know, I'm telling y'all now, it's right around the corner. And it's our spring general election. We're gonna be deciding a lot of races that have to do with Wisconsin and our statewide offices, right, and elected officials. Whereas in November, it was a lot of national stuff, so at the federal level, like president and things like that. So this time around, there's many things on the ballot. Some of the top two things that we're going to be focusing in on, though, is Wisconsin Supreme Court and Wisconsin State Superintendent. Looking at the deadlines, right now at this point, you can still early vote. We are actually an early vote site, so you can come through on Wednesday. Tomorrow between 12 and 5 and vote here as well. And then even if you're not prepared to early vote right now, you can still vote on election day. You can register to vote on election day, as long as you have proof of residency, and you can vote that same day. That's one thing that we have here in Wisconsin called same day voter registration, so that you have the right to vote, even if it's already on election day and you are not registered yet or you recently moved. You're still able to vote on election day. So, zooming in again on what we're actually voting for, um, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what each of these offices do. So, for the Supreme Court actually decides a number of cases per year that directly impact us, like our voting maps, right? Like what district do we end up in, and making sure that they're not gerrymandered or drawn in a particular way to benefit one political party over the other. Our Supreme Court is also the highest court in the state of Wisconsin. So if you um go through circuit courts and your ruling was unfair, you can appeal and take it to the Supreme Court, and these are the people that's going to hear your case. It matters who sits on the courts because they decide really key issues like Act 10, so the right for workers to unionize in Wisconsin, abortion access, and many other key issues. The court is made up of 7 justices and all voted for like 10 years each. So the person we elect now gets to stay on for a very long time. So we need to make sure that when we have the chance to impact who's actually on the Supreme Court, that we go out and do our parts. So going over to the state superintendent, they actually oversee Wisconsin public school districts. So any policy that's happening within your kids' schools, they're the ones that sets the tone for that. They're the ones that go and lobby at the state legislature for funding for the school boards or for the different school districts. Um, they're also the ones that report to school management, attendance, and performance rate. Um, so they kind of get to set the tone for like what's going to improve attendance, what's going to help our students achieve, right? Um, how should you manage a school well? And they also receive and redisperse out federal funds, right? So when the federal government, if the Trump administration still gives money to schools, right? Over the next 4 years, when the federal government gives money to schools, this department, like the leader of this department of public instruction, actually distributes the money back out. And this is important because they actually get to say, "Oh, like we actually need more money going towards special education, or we want to incentivize, transportation in rural areas, right? So we're going to support a little bit more with that." So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the candidates for these races. So running for superintendent, the first candidate we're going to talk about is Jill Underly. And some of the things that Jill stands for is that Jill is a supporter of public schools. Jill is endorsed by the Democratic Party. We don't have any party affiliation, but it's important to know who's endorsing these people. When it comes to funding for schools, Jill wants to increase the state's reimbursement rate for the cost of special education up to 90%. I have a child that's in special education myself, and I know how expensive it is. If we didn't have, if we don't have schools that are equipped to actually care for our children and provide the correct education for them, that could lead to really negative outcomes for our children, especially Black children with disabilities. Black children with disabilities are criminalized at the highest rates. When we look at arrest records in MMSD, we'll find that Black children with disabilities are overwhelmingly represented. So what we don't want to do is like take away funding from special education. So that's one of the things that Jill Underly stands for, is increasing the reimbursement rate. Jill also supports collective bargaining for school teachers. So collective bargaining just means you can unionize. You can come together to negotiate for your salary and different benefits and things like that. Jill also believes that local school boards should decide if police should be in schools. We have a police free schools campaign, and we believe that police should not be in schools. Um, and Jill is saying that each school district should decide. We Jill also supports free school lunches for all, and supports diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one thing to note is that as we're sharing all this is what these people saying that they support. Um, it's still our job to hold them accountable and make sure they do these things after they get elected, right? And Jill is actually the incumbent right now. So it makes sense for us to be, as informed voters, be looking at what Jill's track record actually is with implementing these things. But for now, we're just going to cover what they say they stand for. And these are all pulled from interviews that they've done um, leading up to the election. And then moving on, another person that's running for Wisconsin State Superintendent is Brittany Kinzer. So Brittany is backed by the Republican Party of Wisconsin. Brittany is advocating for private and charter schools. When it comes to funding for schools, Brittany wants to increase the state's reimbursement for rural transportation costs. Brittany does not support collective bargaining for school teachers. Brittany also believes that the police should be in Milwaukee public schools. This is what we could get a quote on, specifically for Milwaukee public schools. And then Brittany does not believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion belongs in the Department of Public Instruction. And when we're talking about DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is programming guidelines and standards that say, hey, we need to have diverse viewpoints represented in our schools. We need to make sure that there's equity so every student gets what they need to learn, and then that there's inclusion, that everyone has a chance to participate in the activities that's going on at the school, and in order to learn as well, right? So that's what we're talking about when we say DEI. So those are the two candidates that you're going to see on your ballot, um, for the office of Wisconsin Supreme Superintendent candidate. So moving on to Supreme Court, one of the first candidates is Susan Crawford. So again, according to recent interviews, Susan supports women's access to reproductive health care. Susan supports restorative justice, transparency in sentencing data, and diversion programs like drug court. Susan wants the Wisconsin Supreme Court to act as a check and balance against the other branches of government. What that means is that our government was meant to be in balance with one another so that one branch doesn't get too much power, right? So we have three branches. We have legislative, judicial, and executive. So if we're looking at the state level, those branches will be represented by our state assembly and our state senate in the legislative branch, our Supreme Court in the judicial branch, and then our governor in the executive branch. And what Susan is saying is that if the governor or the legislature is out of line, the way that we do our ruling should make sure that they're back in alignment with doing what's best for the people, or that they're not abusing their power. And so that's what that means by a check and a balance against the other branches of government. And then she supports nonpartisan voting maps, meaning that they shouldn't lean either Democrat or Republican. And then she opposes voter ID laws and supports giving a voter the option of swearing under penalty of perjury. So instead of having to show your ID and maybe getting turned away to vote for showing you if you don't have it, she supports just swearing that you are who you say you are under penalty of like a consequence, right? A legal consequence. So moving on to the next candidate for Supreme Court, we have Brad Schimmel. Brad Schimmel supports Wisconsin's 1849 abortion ban. Brad Schimmel also supports Trump's pardon of the January 6th convicted insurrectionists. And he also supports people who attack the police serving their full sentence. Brad Schimmel opposes federal regulations on drinking water and restrictions on coal plants. Brad Schimmel supports unregulated online posting of blueprints for untraceable 3D printed guns. He also co-led a 20-state legal effort to strike down the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. He is endorsed by police unions, and he also opposes workers' rights to unionize. Brad Schimmel wants to take back the Wisconsin Supreme Court and end the madness. He has also attempted to limit early voting in Milwaukee and Wisconsin and Madison. Brad Schimmel is also the candidate who Elon Musk has spent over $25 million on in this election cycle. So now that we've looked at the candidates, we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna open up the space to Pong. But we're both gonna share about why are we voting, um, and how should our community show up at the polls, really centering our issues and our experiences, right? So Pong is gonna speak to what's going on in Stevens Point and why he thinks that Hmong folks should show up to vote and why he's voting as well.
Yeah, so for me personally, why voting is important to me is that because our elected off officials makes decision on certain issues that impact my people and myself, right? Such as taxes, healthcare, education, housing. But one of the major reasons why I vote is that many of the policies that impact our people are decided by elections, um, such as immigration laws, cultural appropriate programs for schools or after school programs. So by voting, we can ensure that we are treated fair and equally. I'm I'm I am also going to talk a little bit in Hmong too, Monka. Um, 一号真经我公母帮把这错项呢，你一号真经到古的话，也用帮把就有么说呢呀？对头被晒对头脑被晒着脑就知了么我后头被是的呢，也被你那只么帮把了么vô呢，也被对头莫对呀我对在家我xử lý nó cho bé cho năng là chuyện ba nhẹ đồ mua program là ba bé cho năng là chỉ bé chỉ một bom ba chỉ bé chỉ một số chỉ để thầu người ta là cho bé sẽ là thế thế của thảm gì để trong đó nhớ cho hosting point nữa là mua ở bên tu là kia một bom sĩ tư thế nào xử lý từ state superintendent và người sai hiệu tận cho public school nhớ cho họ lúc lao Wisconsin đó nè chỉ tụi nó nữa cũng sai hiệu cho school nó thế nữa là sai hiệu để nhiều chuyện này là mua phải để trả là gì còn nó ít tu chuyện chẳng thế tụi ở tụi mù nhớ cho bé ta trả là mua tụi Justice of Supreme Court thế nào xử lý bắt đầu mang cả đi thảm gì thế tụi nó nữa cũng tụi nó giờ họ lúc qua xét chấp lời nhớ cho họ Wisconsin đó nè chỉ lời hiệu cho trái thế nữa chỉ nữa giờ khó chuyện chẳng 我不要多么晒度个呀，贴巴着被还能当时的要做好事好少那贴要做好 Stevens Point 呢，你莫都 City Clerk 贴都 Stevens Point Treasure 我老晒学业绩我人业绩人老做好 Stevens Point 呢，写了了莫就莫靠给我了，我问了他呢，就了晒度到贴了晒度Stevens Point City Attorney 他呢，都那样一度了晒就加一头比如。这让Stevens Point 呢，今年估计一下成讲过，不要多么帮把都说是不要年了都天天要做好 Stevens Point 呢，了么叫 school board 是都讲都天，叫那要叫我了谁叫在到被 school 天，谁了么年把 program 到被叫民谣里家庭头，今年一下成讲我呢多么都说，么帮把呢，好我。但是呢，了去Monday 到 Friday，你到 Hostings point 也那什么帮把，你那 on 早了也 early voting Friday Monday 到 Friday 相比较做不那么中度的就nu 别人都话天能够下天能够热呢了去 向人造车启蒙中动的，有你好去空那些要走路不老领导话题突然的，了莫好路帮把浪的你嘛木了可以厦门车移蒙中度，有你好啥包自车就拿了，你木做好 website www da my vote da Wisconsin da gov 了到一下，还有你木做 www da vote 不da or 了到一下呢。係有啲好多都俾 cap service đó là 俾百人呢，先有冇辦法都用個 idea 是得你冇得到一樣，你好多地方下一期俾不俾下一俾咗，我操 back to you, Manka.
Thank you so much for sharing about that, Paul. I think it's so important to I think it's so important to learn how voting impacts our communities all across the state. In a state like Wisconsin, where everyone is all eyes on all our elections, and we're seen as like a key state, a swing state, an influential state. Black and Southeast Asian voters in Wisconsin are key communities, right? So Black folks experience some of the highest rates of voter suppression. So there's a lot of effort and money spent into making sure that we don't get out to vote, into making sure that we're turned away when we do try to go vote, right? And then Hmong folks are represent the fastest growing electorate in the state of Wisconsin. So we are important. It does make a difference when we show up. Those hundred votes, or those in Stevens Point, or those extra 1,000 votes in Milwaukee make a difference, right? It makes a difference when we show up because we're beating so many different odds to actually have our voices be heard. So thank you, Pong, so much for sharing about why it's important for Hmong folks in Stevens Point to vote. Um, I'm gonna say for us in Madison, and me as a black woman, me as a queer black woman, and me as a mother, um, I feel like I have to go vote on April 1st. When you look at the arrest data from MMSD, so from Madison Metropolitan School District, we see that black children with disabilities show up overwhelmingly in the arrest data from Madison Police Department. I have a child with a disability. I want someone who is leading our schools at the state level to see my child with and see him in his humanity and in his dignity and think twice about how to support his leadership, his creativity, and his overall well-being before thinking about how many dollars they can use to put cops in the schools to arrest him and harass him and treat him inhumanely. And then that's connected to the Supreme Court because when it comes to police violence, it doesn't end in the schools, right? We see this in our communities on the street. I remember living on Allied Drive in Madison, and at least 3 times out of the week, at nighttime, it would be 10 o'clock at night, 11 at night, 12 at night, and there would be police vehicle lights shining into my living room. And when you go and ask them what's going on, oh, we're looking for somebody. And they're driving down the trail recklessly. And they're cutting off the entrance and exits into the neighborhood, right? Looking for somebody. This is literally like fascist behavior, right? Something that you would hear about from back in the old days, or you know what I'm saying, like some Nazis or something, right? But that's what we're experiencing in Madison as Black people and as Southeast Asian people. We get over policed in our small little neighborhoods and pockets of Madison that we're at. We get racially profiled. We just had to support one of our youth, Janavia, who was racially profiled by Madison police while walking down the street. And she was manhandled, pushed to the ground, a knee put in her back as she was yelling at them, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. Janavia is about 5 foot nothing. There was no reason to do that to her. There never is, but definitely not her. Janavia was detained, charged with obstructing, resisting and obstructing, taken to jail, put in solitary confinement, and was not able to contact her family until hours later around 3 a.m. And then was released the next day with all the charges dropped. That's how we know it was racial profiling. Because they had no reason to even be in contact with her. When we went up there and asked, we spoke with 3 or 4 different people in police leadership before we spoke to the interim chief, and all of them said that they saw nothing wrong with how Janavia was treated. We have someone running for Supreme Court right now who watched the video of Matt Kinney shooting Tony Robinson, a teenager at the time, in the head, the mouth, the chest, and the head again. And he said there was nothing wrong with that video, with what he saw in that video. So that's why I'm going to vote for Supreme Court, right? So it is important for us, those of us who have something to lose, those of us who are fighting to be seen as human every day in schools, out in the broader world, in our workplaces, even in our homes. It's important for us to go vote on Tuesday, April 1st. So if you want to vote early, you can come to Freedom Inc. Tomorrow, we're actually an early vote site, so from 12 to 5, you can come through and vote. Um, I'm also gonna share that Freedom Action Now, our sister organization, is hosting a rodeo line dancing party where you're also gonna get some more election information. There's gonna be free food, family fun, um, and we have a special guest DJ, DJ Martinez White, who's gonna be playing all the songs for us and everything. We even got some fans, so we can do the boots on the ground dance. I've been practicing. It's important while we're getting attacked and while we're living under a wannabe fascist regime that we still find some time to have some joy and laugh with each other and get educated and get ready, right? So come through to the rodeo. It's going to be Saturday, March 29th from 6 to 8. And bring the whole family. We got activities for everybody. Yeah, and with that, I'm just gonna pass it back over to Pong if there's anything you wanted to say to close us out. Any last things you had to say before I close us out?
Yeah, I think that local election is as important as national. So I hope that you can use your voice, go out and vote. We have early voting sites, and if you can't make it, go on April 1st. Again, poll opens from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I encourage all of you guys to go out and vote um, because you can make an impact in all of our community. Cú sa chân ni shada ka ne tàu mu bom ba thế ne lu shua ni ha mu ro la ba to be hai nang shada thế na e ne ha mu vo chi to ne non za la lu blo ni ba ti in de la khi xiang sa yi mong e ne mu bom ba ne lu shua ni ya ha chi jiang or la cao to zu cuo hai nang ni lo te chi mi ka na mo to ya tan dai wo cho. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Pong, for hopping on. Thank
Yeah,
you
thank you
all.
for having me.
Of course, of course. Thank you to all of our Community Power Coalition members who are across the state doing actions and doing voter turnout events today and through the rest of the week leading up to Election Day. Again, please go out and vote, y'all. Please make a plan to vote. Our voices matter and they must be heard. Have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.